You know the conversation, the one where you should have said something like 3 weeks ago, maybe even 3 months ago. It's sitting in your inbox as an unsent draft email. It's the thing that you rehearse in the shower or on the drive into work, and then you don't say anything in the meeting. And instead of having that conversation, you've been doing this slow, polite, professional thing where you just quietly stop giving them anything. You quietly stop putting yourself in the room. You stop fighting for their raise. You quietly stop giving others the good projects. You're not managing them anymore at that moment, friend. What you're managing them out quietly, passively, and calling it giving them space, calling it because we care about human beings. I'm not going to confront them. I've got a name for that, and it's not kind. It's quiet firing. And today we're talking about why leaders do it every day and what it's actually costing you and the exact sentence you're going to use to stop it. Welcome back to the Leadership Sandbox. I'm Tammy J. Bond, and I'm excited that today I get to share with you one of the tools that I use building healthy leaders, not perfect ones, not even nice ones, but healthy ones. So let's get into the sandbox. In 3, 2, 1, let's go. So here's the limiting belief running the show for you. If I say the hard thing, I'll damage the relationship. If I confront them, I'll damage the relationship. So instead, you soften it. Instead, you delay it. You wait for a better time that never comes because you never create the space for it. And here's the thing that you tell yourself. You're being kind, but you're not. You're actually being comfortable. You are being comfortable. And there's a difference, and your team can feel it and they can see it. You know, researchers at Fortune actually put a name to the manager side of this a few years back. Quiet firing. The pattern where a manager keeps ignoring a direct report's requests for feedback, for growth, or a raise, or hoping the person eventually takes the hint and leaves on their own instead of getting an honest conversation. It's the passive route dressed up as professionalism. And you know what they say about putting lipstick on a pig? Well, that's what leaders are doing in that quiet firing. And the data on what avoidance costs, it's not little. Research on delayed workplace conversations has found that a large share of managers put off a hard conversation for a month or more, and a meaningful chunk push it out a full year or longer. A full year, friends. That's not delay, that's decisions to let a problem run your team instead of you leading it. And here's the number that should make you sit up and pay attention. Teams led by managers who consistently delay those bold or hard conversations show performance drops to over a third compared to teams where issues get addressed on time and with attention to the detail of the timing. You're not protecting your team by staying quiet. You are taxing them for your discomfort. Ooh, that landed for someone in the back of the room today. Listen, I've watched this where leaders have stepped into the space of, I'm just going to take time and I'm just going to not address it right now because it doesn't feel right, or I'm not sure that addressing it's really going to make a difference. So my hope as a strategy gets implemented in that moment. And what I've watched it cost, I watched it years ago with an organization where the leader who didn't like to have those confronting conversations avoided it with two key executives on the team. And what ended up happening was an explosion in the office between the two executives because the leader never actually addressed the issues with both of them. So they took it out on each other, which then had a ripple effect to everybody else. So then all of us got to go to an offsite to have a conversation about it. And it was a very direct and very bold conversation. And I'll never forget that CEO sitting to right next to me as I'm standing facilitating the dialogue with his executives, and he's sitting right there, and he kept tapping the table, and I'd put my hand on his shoulder and say, "You good?" He'd say, "It's getting uncomfortable. It's getting uncomfortable." I said, "This is part of the problem. Your team needs to have this conversation. I want you to be present. I will manage the room for you. Just be at ease, or I'm going to say, leave the room, and then we're going to have a different conversation." And what was interesting is he actually sat in it. And at the end of the 3 days, after we moved through some really bold and difficult conversations quickly, created plans for how we'll address them even quicker in person in the future, he came up to me afterwards and he said, "I was really uncomfortable, but I saw how you managed the room, and I want you to teach me how to do that better." That's a leader who stepped into not wanting to sit there and quietly hope these people just leave and they move on to other opportunities so I don't have to have the difficult conversation with them about what's not working. When it explodes like that, something's going to give. And is it going to be you, or is it going to be the team? Either way, it's costing you. And here's what I want to tell you about that. The actual cost of avoiding a hard conversation with someone on your team, someone who's underperforming, someone who might have a personality issue, who is the explosive one in the office, and everybody just makes an excuse of, "Oh, that's just how he is," right? Someone whose behavior is quietly dragging down the whole team. That avoidance for you is costing dollars. It's costing you dollars in time. And if you think about budgeting your time like you do your resources and your money, how much are you wasting avoiding those conversations? How much time are you giving up to the problem? Because I see a pattern in almost every leader I coach that fear is always bigger than the conversation, always. And the reality is, when we confront it, we recognize that that was, just as they say, false evidence appearing real. It was me looking in the mirror and having a hard time at what was looking back. And I didn't know how I was going to feel safe having that bold conversation. But let's get honest about this, friends. The excuse of "I'm too busy" or "I'm just busy, and so I don't have the conversations," that's not what's keeping you from having the conversation. One key indicator that I've seen many times is that leaders, you're afraid of being disliked. You want to be a good boss. You like being liked, but being liked and being respected are not the same currency. They don't spend the same way. And you cannot spend one to buy the other because they're not the same currency. Number 2 on this is that for you, leader, you don't trust your own delivery, because you've built this story so huge in your head about having this bold, confronting conversation about a behavior that's no longer serving the workplace. You'll either put somebody else in to address it and still avoid it because you don't want to confront it, because you don't trust your own delivery. You've never actually learned or been taught how to have those bold conversations, so you avoid them. Or when you've had what you thought was a good bold conversation, somebody made a complaint about you to HR. Or when you thought you were going to have that bold conversation, it blew up to a level that people heard in the office and it really wasn't a good conversation. It wasn't the way it was constructed because, again, you weren't taught how to have bold conversations. So you just avoid them altogether instead of building the skill like you build a muscle. You got to build the skill on how to have those conversations and how to confront them in a way. And number 3 on this one, you are conflict, or you may be conflict avoidant by design. And nobody told you that conflict avoidance is not the same thing as peace. I guarantee 100% of the time, when I'm talking with leaders about a conversation that they've been avoiding, what has built up and the turmoil on the inside that's built up is not creating any form of peace. You might think it's peace in the workplace. It's just delayed conflict with interests that your body can no longer afford. Here's the truth underneath all of these things. Avoiding the conversation doesn't make you safe. It makes you the bottleneck. And your best people are watching how you handle the tough stuff. And if the answer is he doesn't, she doesn't, they start updating their opinion of your leadership real time, quietly, the same way you went quiet on them. So here's the shift I want you to make right now in your own head, in your own self-talk. Frame it up. This is no longer a limiting belief. We're reframing our thinking on this. A hard conversation delivered on time is an act of care. A hard conversation delayed is an act of self-protection dressed up as kindness. I'm going to say that one more time for the person in the back of the room that needs to write a note about this. A hard conversation delivered on time is an act of care. A hard conversation delayed is an act of self-protection dressed up as kindness. Now, I want you to say that back to yourself later today. Write it down on a sticky note, write it on your whiteboard, put it on your computer screen, make it the default screen on your phone. Because the moment you actually believe that to be true, that clarity is kindness and silence is cruelty, you stop treating the conversation like a threat and start treating it like a responsibility. Friends, I want to give you something to actually use, not just feel inspired by for the next 20 minutes as you finish driving into the office or forget about it completely by lunch. Here is a simple 4-step tool that you can use. And I believe it's going to fit really well for you. It goes with our command leadership behavior operating system. I want you to claim it. That means name it early. That moment that you notice the behavior, name it. Name what you've observed to yourself. Name it in one sentence. Write it out. Not the storyline you've built about it, just the facts of what you've observed. Claim it as the reality that you see. And then I want you to go into one of my 24-24 rules. Give yourself 24 hours to process it. Give yourself the next 24 hours from when you've processed it, you've written it out, right? That noticing of what that issue was, and then commit to addressing it. So you're not going to let more than 48 hours go by without addressing it. Not because you have to rush and hurry up, but because we know that delay is where your story builds and where you tell yourself the storyline that makes it a greater reality that's negative, a worse reality, if you will. Number 3, I want you to open with care, not soft. What do I mean by that? Because there's a difference between I care about you and we're going to have a bold conversation to something where you're clearing your throat and you're asking them all the nice questions. And for 10 minutes, you're kind of delaying getting to the point. Care sounds like clarity. Cushioning and being soft sounds like stalling. Let's not do that. And number 4, you can implement this immediately. I want you to share at the end your by when. What's the next step? Because every conversation that we have, every difficult, bold, hard conversation needs to have a landing place. Not just here's what's wrong, bye. Right? But here's what we're doing that's not working, right? We're going through the situation, behavior, the impact of that. And here is what I need to see different and by when I want to see that different. And then you hold both you and the individual to that. And you set up another 24 hours later, you set up a check-in with them. How'd the conversation go for you? What more questions do you have? What resources do you need to succeed with the by when that you were giving to adjust and change this situation? And here's the sentence that I want you to lock onto right now. Now, here is the script, if you will. And I want you to use this sentence. I want you to write it down because this is, yes, it might feel like training wheels, but this is what's going to help build your confidence and change that limiting belief that you've been locked onto. I want to talk about something I should have brought up sooner because I respect you too much to keep letting it slide. Can we grab 15 minutes today? That's it. That's the whole opening when you're wanting to set up one of these bold and challenging conversation. It names the delay. You take ownership of it. It names the respect, and it asks for time, not permission. And you can do this with everybody. And now there's somebody out there that's saying, why do I have to ask my people for permission? Because you know that you're setting up to have a difficult conversation, and they know that you've been waiting to do that. They know that you've been avoiding it. They've been avoiding you because you've been avoiding it. So let's just change that. And I want you to try this week to have one of those conversations. I don't want you to try. I want you to make a plan this week to have that one conversation that you've been sitting on, that you've been avoiding. Just one, not 5, not all of them, just one. What's the big rock? And maybe you don't want to go after the big rock. Maybe you want to start with some small ones so you can build up the confidence to go after the big ones. Because here's what I know for certain. I know this absolutely to be true. After years of doing this work with leaders, teaching them how to build healthy, high-performing teams that are communicating effectively, that are not the ones who, they're not the ones that never feel the fear of having the conversation. They're the ones that confront the fear of having the conversation. Just like I told you about that CEO that sat just right next to me because he was so worried about the conflict in the room, because he didn't like to manage it. He didn't have to. I navigated it. It went amazing. He learned skills. He applied them. It worked for the team, and there was great outcomes. Great outcomes happen when we have these conversations. And I know when we build healthy, high performing teams, not just the ones who, avoid having conversations, they're stepping into it. They're the ones that have those conversations on time with care. Quiet firing isn't leadership. It's leadership's absence wearing a name badge. So who's the conversation for you? You already know. You can already see their face. Now it's time to frame it up. Go have it. Thanks for joining me in the Leadership Sandbox today. We know that leadership is not something you're born with. This skill to have bold conversations, you're not born with it. It's something that you grow into. So take the time to grow into having that next level of bold conversation in the sandbox. Make it a great day, and God bless you.